Professor Moore. Welcome. It's so glad to have you today. Today we're going to interviewing you for the Finish in 4 office to give some guidance and tips about finding career plans and interests for upcoming students. And
well, thank you, Panqian. Are you going to graduate in 4 years?
I hope, but actually, I'm actually graduating in 4 years, but yeah. So a great example, finish in 4.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so how about, do you want to give us a little introduction about yourself?
Okay, I'm a professor of philosophy. I established the philosophy department logic lab when I came. Actually, before I came, I got a grant to get that started. And I've done research that comes out of the logic lab. And then I also was the catalyst for the donation of the Charles B. Wang Asian American Center. So at that point, I learned about Asian American history and taught that for a decade or so. But I'm a logician. I'm the last student of Alonzo Church, who was a famous logician who invented the lambda calculus and who was the dissertation chairman for Alan Turing. So if you know anything about computers, you know who Alan Turing is.
Yeah, I watched the film.
Yeah, it's a great movie, isn't it? The Imitation Game.
Yeah, the story is kind of fun. So
Yeah.
let's move on to our first questions.
Okay.
Yeah, it is when you were in college, maybe it's a long time ago. What helped you to decide on a major or career path?
Well, I couldn't decide what I wanted to be. I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be a mathematician or a philosopher.
Oh.
So I double majored. So I did majors in both. I had departmental honors in both. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I didn't have to choose. I did mathematics and philosophy.
Oh, that's nice. So how
Yeah.
did you figure that philosophy and math are like?
Oh, it's because I fell in love with mathematics when I was a child. And it was in 4th grade, actually. It was I was sent to a special program for kids that were interested in mathematics, and they introduced logic puzzles to us. And so
Oh.
I kind of got hooked on Martin Gardner. A lot of mathematicians began reading books by Martin Gardner. I still have the book. It's called Mathematical Puzzles and Diversions by Martin Gardner.
Oh,
I
wow.
can show it to you. You want me to show it to you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let's see. Um, let me share the screen. Oh, here it is. So this was the book that got me involved in logic, because kind of fallen apart now. But I read this in 4th grade, and the thing that so I made hexaflexagons and
Oh, wow.
for the library club and stuff like that. I learned how to do all these things, and there are always things in here that I didn't understand, so I kind of got hooked on it. And Martin Gardner does both philosophy and mathematics. He was a philosophy major, and he he started writing these columns for Scientific American. So it was always a dream of mine to be involved with Martin Gardner things since I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That book looks like you have been reading it for a lot of times.
Well, I found a better copy, but I gave it away to Alan Kim's daughter. I thought maybe she would look at it and become hooked as well.
Yeah. The future professor in philosophy. And then my second question would be, was there ever a time that you questioned yourself on why you were in college, and what did you do to resolve those feelings?
Oh, let's see. I guess so. This was more in high school, actually. It was the Vietnam War was going on, so many of us wondered what the point was if we were going to be drafted to go to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things that we did were countercultural in those days, to take philosophy courses, to, learn about politics and that kind of thing. And it was part of the culture at those days to think about what you really wanted to do when you grew up. So one of the things from high school is I never wanted to be a teacher that was, used coercion or manipulated students or forced them to learn by grades. I was always interested in free schools like Summerhill, where kids
Mm.
follow their imagination and they learn because they love it, not because
Mm-hmm.
they're forced to do it by grades. So a whole bunch of us, became teachers, and we check in with each other once in a while and said, have you sold out? Have you gone over to the other side? Or are you still trying to teach people to be free? So
Oh,
liberal
wow.
arts really means to be liberated, to be
Uh-huh.
free. And a liberal arts education should give you the freedom to choose the kind of person that you want to be, the kind of career you want to pursue.
Wow. I hope you I hope you can do that. That's kind of like the dreamland of every student.
Well, that's partly why I'm a little bit crazy in terms of how I grade and things. I allow students all kinds of ways to earn a grade, so they
Mm-hmm.
can't, not work. But when
Mm-hmm.
you take away the motivation of learning uh, based on grades, people, really get excited about learning again. And I think that's what, makes me want to be a teacher.
Oh, so you feel like the creativity in like the learning actually motivate you and like the end goal of being a teacher?
Yeah, it's a vehicle for expressing what I'm about. My thing is to learn and to have other people learn and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. So my third question would be, were there specific experience you remember having great meaning to you? It can be like either job or internship or mentoring relationship. And what types of experience you would recommend for upcoming
Mhm.
students?
Well, there's so many things. If I think back on it,
Mm-hmm.
we got John Baker, his funding to come back to swim. He was a quadriplegic, or
Mm-hmm.
getting Lonnie Dinger honorary doctorate. I guess what happened was that I was raising my daughters, and in between the two of them, I had a son who died of sudden infant death syndrome. So I was
Oh.
very protective, wanting them to have be successful in school. So
Mm-hmm.
what happened was that my daughter was about to enter the third grade. There's a gifted and talented program near the university called Mount Elementary School,
Mm-hmm.
and she was about to enter that. And then in the news, there was the news of the suicide of two girls, Asian American girls, who had met in the gifted and talented program and then had gone on to Ward Melville High School.
Mm-hmm.
And they uh, lie down on the Long Island Railroad and and had a suicide pact and died. And that that bothered the community completely. That both the Asian American, the Asian Indian community, and the Chinese American communities, because our Asian communities care about their children so much, and to see such a tragedy. And
Mm-hmm.
my daughter was just about to enter this program where these two girls had met, and so
Mm-hmm.
that's what led me to try to create something on campus that would be meaningful for Asian American students. So that's after I came back from China. I was on a conference.
Mm-hmm.
I came back and I decided I was going to try to, convert a hallway to become an Asian American center. I had my father draw up the plans. Charles Wang was coming to campus. I handed him the notebook with all the plans and all the proposals. And I said, Charles, would you do this? Because it's so important. And he looked at it. His wife said, Charles, why don't you do it? And he says, how much will it cost? And my dad had spec'd it out at 17,500. And so I said, I think it costs 25,000. And he reached out his hand and he says, okay, I'll do it. I said,
Oh,
what?
wow.
You're gonna do this? And he was really a man of his word. I mean, he gave me a sent a check. I have a copy of it somewhere. I think I took a Xerox of it,
Oh,
$25,000. And then his company matched it, because it was and then he said, why are we building, why are we renovating a hallway? Let's build a building. And by
mhm.
the end of the year, he donated $25 million for the Charles B. Wang Asian American Center, which is on campus now.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I'm guessing not every student will have like that kind of experience.
Well, I mean that building, I watched it being built. It
Uh-huh.
took so long because they had to pass a special law in Albany so that Charles could build it with his own crew and
Oh.
then give it back to the university, because
Mhm.
I walked the architect around campus, and the campus has very poor buildings. All of the grout, the what's it called, between the bricks, it's coming out because there's a lot of sand in it. It was built by the same contractor who built the prisons on Long Island. And when I
Oh.
showed the architect the poor state of the buildings, he knew that they wanted to build it with their own people.
Mm,
And so that's
okay.
why all the special arrangement had to be made to build the
Mhm.
building.
Mhm. So, a follow-up question maybe on that would be like, so based on the story, would you recommend the students to be more involved in like, I don't know, like civic justice, or just be, I don't know, like what
Yeah,
types
I
of
understand.
experience
Yeah,
do you think
well,
students can reach out
but when
to?
see when this happened, there was no education. There was no Department of Asian and Asian American Studies. There was no
Mhm.
one teaching Asian American Studies. So I said someone really should do this. So I stopped doing my logic pretty much, and I
Oh, wow.
immersed myself in learning all this. And the person that I learned the most from was a filmmaker named Lonnie Ding, and
Mhm.
she showed me the power of making films, power of video, and
Mhm.
uh, and so I invited her to Stony Brook,
Mhm.
and that began a relationship. My students were creating documentaries on Angel Island,
Oh.
because at that time in 2000, it was on the 12 most endangered historic sites in America. Angel
Mm.
Island is in San Francisco Bay, and when Chinese came from uh, the the Pacific, they
Mhm.
were interned on this island,
Mhm.
and because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, and they were be questioned and interrogated to see if they were really sons and daughters of people who lived in America. Because of the discriminatory laws, the Chinese came up with creating imaginary families and villages. Because what happened in 1906, there was an earthquake in San Francisco, which destroyed all the records, which allowed people to claim to be sons and daughters of people who were living in America. They were called paper sons and daughters. And that
Oh.
led to their being interned on Angel Island and imprisoned until they could pass an interview. And so what
Mm.
the Chinese did was they carved poems in the walls. They actually carved poems in the wooden walls, because many of them were scholars. And
Oh,
that was their
wow.
protest against not being able to have equal treatment as other immigrants. And so from 1910 um, uh, until that station closed, that has been a historic site that was in ruins in 2000. And so I went out to visit. It was unjust. So my students started making projects to
Mhm.
document why this should be restored as a national historic site.
Oh, that's such a meaningful project, and I feel like, yeah, it's like very creative, and it's like very motivational for students to like start their own project.
We
Actually.
did a decade's worth of projects, and we
Mhm.
put it on a DVD. There's like
Oh.
all of these different projects, and a lot of them were inspired or dedicated to Lonnie Ding.
Mhm.
And then what happened was eventually there was a movement, money was given to restore this. And then when in 2010 at the centenary, there was the whole place had been restored as a historic place. And
Mhm.
Erica Lee and Judy Young had written a book, and I had interviewed Erica Lee. She just testified in Congress recently about the anti-Asian violence that's happening.
Mhm.
And this DVD that my students made was passed out on Angel Island on that day. Um,
Oh.
they had done it for a Eureka project, but the judges wouldn't even look at the project. They just judged it to be unworthy because it was a group project where everyone had worked together. And so I told them, someday your project will be seen. And 10 years later, it was distributed at the reclamation of that historic site on the centenary of the opening. And the
Mhm.
students got their work seen.
That's so meaningful. So my next question would be, how did you discover your interests and career goals?
Well, I guess I couldn't decide between being a philosopher or a mathematician. So,
Mhm.
I became a logician, which is kind of in between.
Oh.
It was funny. I thought, I was being totally different and rebelling from my family
Uh-huh.
history because, like no one was a philosopher and so forth. And after all this happened, the Wang Center and all this stuff, my Aunt Catherine tells me, "Oh, you know what? Your grandfather was a philosopher." and and then I opened up his notebooks. They're math puzzles.
Oh my God.
He was a philosopher who wrote math puzzles. Um, so there you go. You think you're running away and doing something totally rebellious, and you end up,
Uh-huh.
you know, at the very place where you know,
So
you're
it's somehow
following.
inherited.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my grandfather gave me a Chinese name, Ma Wen Dun. So the Ma is the horse. The Wen has two
Uh-huh.
fires above wood, and so that means like brilliant. And the last word has a mouth in it, so it means scholar.
Oh,
That was my Chinese name.
that's cool. Yeah, I would love to learn it actually. Yeah, so my next
Yeah.
question would be, what advice would you give to an undergraduate student who is having a challenging time deciding what path to follow?
Mm. Well, I guess I'd say do what makes you passionate, and always be willing to, instead of just studying the things that you're aiming at, to
Mm-hmm.
study other things,
Mm-hmm.
because doing those other things, like whether it be music or philosophy classes, it
Mm-hmm.
will enrich your experience so that you become, you can do something different that other people can't do. You look
Mm.
at things differently. So,
Yeah, yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm guessing I also have a class that is like very interdisciplinary.
Uh,
And yeah, I think like doing interdisciplinary classes do help sometimes.
well, let me show you this. Uh, this is a book about
Uh-huh.
creativity that I was working on. So this here is a
Uh-huh.
fractal that we discovered in my logic lab, and
Oh.
and it's based on showing that the liar paradox leads to the chaotic liar. And
Uh-huh.
this very fractal was printed in a descendant of Martin Gardner's column in Scientific American.
Uh-huh.
It was by Ian Stewart. So that was one of the things I dreamed about since I was in fourth grade, of being able to do something like that. And if you have books on creativity, what they tell you is to do things a different way. And one of my favorite books on creativity is by Ian Perkins. And he talks about, oh, here it is. I actually have something here. Let me see if I could find, yeah. So
Yeah.
he talks about an apple,
Uh-huh.
and his son comes home and he says, Dad, let me show you, what's inside an apple. And he goes, oh, why destroy a good apple? I've seen what's in an apple so many times. And he goes, no, Dad, just watch. And so the kid takes the knife that he's not supposed to handle, and he
Uh-huh.
turns the apple this way, and he
Okay.
says, he cuts it the wrong way. See, he cuts it like this, and he says, see, Dad, there's a scar inside. And so what Dean Perkins says, this thing, it traveled all the way from someone's discovery to his kid to bringing it home. And he says, if there's a reason for creativity, it's this. It's for an apple cut the wrong way.
I think I kind of heard of this story. It's so great to have the creativity, and I feel like that kind of is the theme of like all your work, just trying to like be creative and passionate.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
because what is life going to be about? You want to say, when I'm done with my career, I'm going to finally do what I want.
mhm.
We're built to find the thing that makes us passionate and do it. If you can find a job that allows you to do that, that's
Mm,
the best thing.
yeah, I hope all the upcoming students would enjoy these tips. Um, and my last question is kind of like a liberal questions.
Okay.
So yeah. So what are some philosophy classes or maybe mathematics or maybe logic classes or books that you would recommend? I know you already recommend two books.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
let's see. Um, well, there's lots of good books here. Let me. What I suggest is that you write your own book,
Oh wow.
and here is when you do it, you have to write a PhD thesis, and
Oh.
here are my my advisors, Donald Kalish. So
Uh-huh.
the logic book we use is by Kalish and Montague, and he asked me to be a junior author on that.
Oh.
Donald Martin is a famous set theorist known for the axiom of determinacy, and Alonzo Church was my chair, and he was one of the great 20th century logicians.
Uh-huh.
And because of Kalish, you know, Kalish asked Church to be my thesis advisor. I became the last student to finish a PhD directed by the great Alonzo Church.
That's cool.
So, so I'd say, read books that that encourage your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Always read books outside of your field.
Mm.
Like you could read the Brothers Karamazov and learn about the problem of evil, and great work in literature, or read The Lord of the Rings and learn about what heroism really is. The books are far more heroic than the movie. To learn what it is to be on an adventure, and that your life has a meaning when you look back on it. And it looks like an adventure where things aren't going to work out, but when tragedy strikes, somehow something good comes out of it. And Tolkien called this a eucatastrophe instead of a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at your life that way, sometimes you'll see that despite some of the tragedies that you have, things come out of it that make your life worth living.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's actually so encouraging. And that's probably the best advertisement I heard for the Lord of the Rings. Because I only saw the movie. I didn't read the book. So
Oh,
now
the book
I
is.
have to go back.
Yeah,
Okay.
the movies are great, very imaginative, but it's more about, all the characters have weaknesses added to them, whereas the heroism of the book is not captured,
Mm,
and the depth of the worlds that were created
uh-huh.
is not there. But there's so many things to read. I would
Yeah.
just suggest that, find what you can do in life and network with the people who are really good, like Lonnie Ding, to
Uh-huh.
show me how to make films, and then do that with students and create your own, and then
Oh.
believe in it. Don't. If I had succeeded early and their work had won the Eureka Prize at Stony Brook, I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't have struggled for 10 years to get their work seen, and then it
Mhm.
wouldn't have been distributed at the historic restoration of Angel Island. They in between we had gone to Ellis Island, and they came out, and there's a picture, a whole boatload of students, all
Mhm.
Asian faces, pretty much, are going over to Ellis Island to see their work finally be seen.
Mhm. Oh, that's
Yeah,
so like keep our confidence.
yeah,
And
like sometimes early success is bad because you think you've made it, and so
uh-huh.
failure could be a good thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that you keep struggling, and finally the real purpose of those projects gets finally achieved.
Mhm. It's like keep digging, and then there may be more treasure to come out.
Yeah, and you're a treasure. You have a winsome smile. You have a joy. You still have the childlikeness. That's something that you should never lose.
Interesting. Thank you, Professor. So actually that's our last question, and thank you
Okay.
so much for being here.
Okay. Well, thank you for interviewing me.